When we last left off with my indie roguelike 6 months ago, we had a whole lot of loot and nowhere to put it or distribute it. The dungeon only generated combat encounters and it was a lot easier to get lost than it was to find the exit. So while I've been gone from YouTube, I decided to switch my focus on expanding exploration for my game Rogue Pocket Quest. So far with development, I've focused on the combat and making that feel good while playing it. However, it is meaningless without the exploration part, especially in a world with an ever-changing dungeon with a wide variety of loot. I want this game to have a little bit more than just fight after fight and embrace the maze-like aspects of the dungeon, and reward players for going off the beaten path or stumbling upon the game's lore. So during my much needed break from game development since launching my last game, Footjoust, I started picking away at bits and pieces, adding loot practically into the game. I ended up starting work on an interaction system, at first with NPCs, which you will hear more about in another video, but these interactions laid out the system for opening chests. So now when in range of something interactable like a chest, the attack button will change into an icon associated with it. When we open the chest, it will pop one of these toast notifications telling you what you picked up, which also saves the player from going through any new menus and instantly storing the item in your inventory. What's also great about this is that anything in the game can call this toast notification system just by sending a string and an image, so it can also tell the player if the inventory is full. And I can use it for literally anything else in the game as well, all with a single line of code. I was mostly on the fence about having loot drop from chests or enemies, but ended up sticking with just chests so I had more control over where it came from, instead of painstakingly configuring each enemy or having it drop at random rates. But with that said, it wouldn't be impossible for certain enemies to drop items, but just not yet. Essentially, there will be basic chests in most combat rooms, hand placed, and the more rare silver and gold chests which will spawn in their own dedicated rooms like this, which became the start of other rooms being introduced into the game. But specifically with the chests, I created a system within the dungeon generation algorithm that looks at all the dead ends of all the paths generated and has a high chance of placing one of these chest rooms on the very end, which will encourage the player to explore the rest of the dungeon or reward players if they get lost at the end of a path before backtracking. Just like here, you can see a path that shoots off and essentially goes nowhere. After the dungeon generation is completed, the system would have gone back and placed this room here. So as I pushed forward, I began work on some of the rooms that will be included throughout exploration. At this point, I'm still tweaking how often these rooms appear, and you can see I kind of hard code injected what room numbers these spawn at for now, just while I test them. But when these special rooms are spawned, the game also makes a special effort to roll back to previous rooms and branch off with a new path, but not always. I plan to create a ton of different room types which will help the player. There'll be special events or even add lore and story progression, but for now the background work is done and I'm able to just drop these rooms straight into the game very easily. So for now we have the micropub, which will be a room for the player to stop and rest, use the one-way deposit for items into their bank, buy select items from the pub, and have interesting and unique NPC interactions. At this point, none of these interactions have been implemented yet and will be done at a later date, but the room appears helping me balance and test the dungeon generation in general, and start to feel the vibe and the atmosphere of what this room is really about. I then moved along to the Blessing Room, which gives the player one of two semi-permanent special abilities, which they can only carry one of at a time, and if they die, they lose it. At the moment, it's just placeholder art, and I've only created 2 blessings so far, but the foundations are here. Now each blessing is just a scriptable object that equips to the player, making it very easy to create new ones. The first blessing is simple, it's just a passive one that heals the player every 3 seconds, while the second one makes this button appear here, allowing the player to switch between its original function and the ability for the player to throw their weapon using the right stick. Didn't finish implementing the throwing part, but the system and the background foundations are all there now. So at a later date I can start, maybe with your help, getting ideas and creating things like decoys, dropping bombs, energy shields, and other ranged attacks. And the last room I was able to create was the cartography room, which reveals to the player the whole map if they find it. Because as I was creating the systems that expand how big the dungeon is, which is calculated by the player's dungeon level, which is essentially how many times the player has completed the dungeon crawl to the end, starts to get easier and easier to get lost, so I continued to work on the map system. Before, it just simply showed up in the corner, didn't have any corridors appear, and there was no way to really read it. So now when you click on it, you can expand it, zoom in, scroll around, and as you walk through each corridor and each room, it starts to unfold, and you can find where you've been and where you can go. And to find where you can go, the gates in each room will register blue if you've not passed through them, and green if you have. So now when you get to the cartography room, it shows you where all the main rooms are, and you can look for a particular room based on the icons as well. I also made it so it just reveals the rooms and not the corridors, because I found that revealing everything actually made it a lot harder to know where you have been and gone already. And additionally, to aid navigation, there will be special rooms that allow you to warp to rooms that you've already visited before, but I kind of ran out of time to do that one as well. So that kind of comes to the end for now. The last thing I really did was make this key. That is a very rare drop. At the moment it only opens gold chests, but I'm not sure what else I'm going to use it for, so I'm going to think about that. But going forward, I'm going to try and keep these videos coming out every couple of weeks. I don't know how that's going to go, but call this a reboot, revival, return of this channel and this game. Regardless, I'm going to keep this rolling more consistently, so don't forget to subscribe to keep up with the series. If you have any ideas for rooms or blessings, let me know, or just jump into the Discord server and discuss it there. Because the big goal for the end of the year at least is to have some kind of playable version in your hands or something, so we can get some sort of bigger playtesting going on.